This is a video about the Jubilee bracelets for the Seiko SKX007. What we have here are a few different variations of the Jubilee bracelet. We have the OEM Seiko Jubilee, which, as everyone knows, has the hollow end links. We have the Super Jubilee from Strapcode. And we have the Angus Jubilee from Strapcode, which was just recently released. So what I have installed here on the watch, on one side I have the Angus Jubilee, that's this side here. On the other side I have the Super Jubilee, just so you can see the difference between the two. And Strapcode's website does actually show you the size of the links. It gives you the measurement so you can see, but basically what it is, the size of each link on the Angus Jubilee is much larger than it is on the Super Jubilee. You'll also notice too that the center links, the polished part of the Jubilee bracelet on the Angus Jubilee, is quite a bit wider than it is on the Super Jubilee. So the Super Jubilee width of the center polished links follows basically the size of the OEM Seiko bracelet, where it's this slim portion in the center that's polished. And this is a traditional style of Jubilee, so you'll see other watch brands use this type of Jubilee where the center links are rather narrow like this compared to the end links here, or compared to the outer part of the link here where it's a bit wider. You'll see on the Angus Jubilee the outer part here isn't as wide because this center polished part is quite a bit wider than it is here. One thing I do want to point out, and this was not apparent to me from the Strapcode website, and I actually would not have ordered the Angus Jubilee if I had known this ahead of time, is the shape of the end links. The Super Jubilee and the hollow OEM Seiko end links, you'll see from this side of the watch, fill the entire gap between the lugs here. The end link comes all the way up to where it meets the bezel here. And I know people have talked about the end links on these not lining up perfectly, or when they get them they had to sand the sides to make them fit into the lugs of the watch. So I don't know if that's tolerance variations on the watch itself from Seiko or if it's variations from Strapcode, but that was one of the complaints I saw a lot of online. The main difference you'll see on the end links, aside from how they're designed, just if you take a look at it, it has these two protruding links here that are just all one part of the end link. And a lot of people, myself included, didn't like how this looked. They think it should look more like the OEM Seiko one, where it has these two links here that go into the end link. And that's what the Angus Jubilee does. It has these two end links, so it looks like the design of the OEM Seiko bracelet. The issue with the Angus Jubilee is the design of the top of the end link. You'll see here, instead of following the line where the bezel is up there, like how the OEM Seiko end link is and like how the Super Jubilee is, it dips down pretty low here. So there's this big gap from there to there between where the end link is and where the bezel is. So in my opinion, it almost looks like it was designed for a different watch case. I think this should have been made where it goes all the way up to the bezel here. It almost looks like, I don't know if people have had this problem when their end link gets loose, but if your end link gets kind of smashed in and it no longer fits on your watch properly, you'll notice it'll kind of look like this here, where you'll have this gap there between the top of the end link and where it meets up with the bezel there. Don't get me wrong, this actually is very solid. I mean, it's well designed, and if you look at the underside, the Angus Jubilee, the bottom of the end link, it's a lot well, I'd say better made than the older Super Jubilee was. Whereas Super Jubilee, it's like when you get it to fit in there, it ends up not really having a good solid end there. Whereas this one, it kind of lines up better out there. But again, if I had known about this design of the Angus Jubilee, I would not have ordered it. Just the space here between the end link and the bezel there, between the lugs, it really should have just followed that line there. You can even see that little space in between there. You could just about slip the end of a toothpick in that opening there between where the end link and the case meet, right in the center. See, this should be way up here, right there. This should have been designed so it goes all the way up to this line here, just like how the OEM end link fits up to the case of the watch, and also how the Super Jubilee lines up to the case of the watch. So that's the issue there. And again, this is the Super Jubilee. It goes straight up there. It follows that line at the top of the case where the bezel is. And this is the Angus Jubilee, where it dips down and doesn't follow that end line properly. As far as the general look of the bracelets, at a glance they look very similar. They're both Jubilee designs. You will notice, as I talked about earlier, the Super Jubilee has smaller links, very similar to the size of the links of the OEM Seiko bracelet. So it does have more of a traditional Jubilee look, more of a kind of a, I guess you could say, a classic look. This one has, if you do want the design of a Jubilee bracelet, but you want what I would call big chunky links, this is the bracelet for you. Which, again, it's not a bad thing. It's a different design. It does have a nice look. It's got an excellent polish and brushed finish on it, just like the Super Jubilee does, but it's a much bigger link there. The other thing I found about the Angus Jubilee compared to the Super Jubilee was the screws are quite a bit bigger, and I was not able with my small screwdrivers to even loosen the screws to adjust the size of the bracelet. I had to use a larger screwdriver just to get the grip I needed to loosen the screws. The screws are all perfectly made. The threads on them are excellent. It's just using a small precision screwdriver, even though the head fit, I wasn't able to get enough leverage to turn the screw to get it out. Again, this is the strap code Angus Jubilee, strap code Super Jubilee, and the Seiko OEM Jubilee.